Welcome to Mercury's fundraising today. Today we are chatting with Rebecca Liu. Rebecca is a managing director at Insight Partners, focusing on B2B SaaS, consumer marketplaces, and fintech. So we're going to get right into it. Okay, Rebecca, hi. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, first question for you. How would you generally describe the fundraising environment right now? What are you seeing? How does it feel? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, it is still two things, relatively quiet and pretty binary.
Okay.
I would say most companies are still extending runway, waiting, seeing, maybe testing a little bit, but not aggressively coming to market. And those that are fall into either one of two camps, one being business is going phenomenally well. I have
Mhm.
full confidence that no matter what the market context is, I'm going to raise a great round. And
Sure.
those rounds are getting done and they're competitive because people do have dry powder and they do want to do deals. On
Mhm.
the other end of the spectrum are I absolutely need to raise. I have no choice. And unfortunately, I am seeing structured deals coming into play, terms that did not exist for the last 2 years coming back, right? But that's because these are companies that have no choice but to come to market. The ones in between might be doing a little bit of testing here and there, but for the most part, still pretty quiet.
Okay, great. Super helpful. So, of the deals that you're kind of looking at, the pitches that are coming across your desk, the ones that you're talking to the rest of your fund about, what types of those deals are you seeing get sort of the most and least momentum and confidence, especially coming from, a generalist like you?
Yeah. So I mean, I would be remiss not to mention the biggest platform shift we've seen in our industry in a really long time, right? And I think it's undeniable that AI is the most transformative, disruptive thing that we've seen since cloud, since mobile. I think it absolutely has the potential to have the impact of that magnitude or beyond,
Yeah.
not only on our industry, but in day to day life. So, of course, there's a ton of buzz, a ton of excitement, and therefore momentum around that category.
Mhm.
Outside of that, I would say the things that are still getting attention are things with not only good numbers and good performance, but also with less uncertainty around business model
Mhm.
and around how long term valuation will play out, how long term profitability and cash flow will look, right? A lot of the businesses where they're doing something completely new, we have no idea how the gross margins are going to evolve, no idea what the EBITDA is ultimately going to look like. Those are more challenging to underwrite right now. It doesn't mean that they're not good businesses. It
Sure.
means that it's going to be harder to come out and get a competitive price when people don't know how to value things in an uncertain environment.
Yeah.
So that also means because capital is expensive right now, that anything that's really capex intensive, that is going to need a lot of cash to get to scale, to get to profitability, probably harder conversations.
Sure. And on the AI front, are you seeing similar sort of like hype cycle signals around like, are people hesitant to sort of jump in on the early end of the AI stuff, or are you feeling just sort of more general momentum across it? I think that these sort of like hypey moments can be kind of binary in that way.
Yeah, I think it's honestly a combination of all of the different sentiments you just described.
Mhm.
There are a couple of companies that we've looked at that we've gotten really excited about because we can see long-term moat and differentiation with an AI driven kind of model.
Right.
Those are rare because there's so much uncertainty in how this is all going to evolve.
Mhm.
I have one portfolio company though that's a good example of the type of bet that we are excited to make in the AI category, Assembly AI,
Mhm.
which really wants to be that API layer for integrating any sort of AI model, right? And they're starting in speech to text, audio intelligence. It's those sort of businesses that at least I'm spending time with,
Mhm.
where you're not necessarily only model building, right? You're thinking about how do I productize this? What's the commercial value? What is the long-term moat? And generally speaking, at least right now, where that moat is distribution and or workflow, we feel it's a better place to bet in this moment in time. Of course, that can evolve.
Right, of course. All right, last question. What advice would you have for a founder who's, coming up on kicking off their seed or their A round today?
Yep. The first thing, the easiest thing is have the numbers and know the numbers.
Mhm.
Uh, it's just going to be so much easier to have that conversation and a competitive conversation when the business and the traction can back up the story, right?
Right.
Again, in a moment where the market is in flux, people want to see proof points and this clarity of what long term this business is going to look like. The
Mhm.
second is be aware of the market context,
Mhm.
and understand that adjustments on both sides might need to be made in order to get something done, right? And know that there might be, anticipate the sort of questions that you might get given what the market dynamics look like. And then finally, just choose the partner and not the price or the deal dynamic. I think if there's one thing that
Mhm.
people have learned, some people the hard way, is that the highest price is not necessarily the best deal, right?
Yeah.
You want people around the table, the literal table and the cap table and the figurative table, who really care about you and the business and will do what's best and will actually do the hard work when things are not going well.
Totally. Yeah. One follow-up question. We hear a lot of questions from founders around outreach strategy as well. So
Hmm.
maybe somebody who isn't already really well connected in the space, who can't get that necessarily warm intro to you or something like that, what advice might you have for them in terms of reaching out to you personally or
Yeah.
generally as they're reaching out to funds?
Yeah, in the same way that I think about how what a good outreach email or LinkedIn ping from me to a founder, the same is true in reverse, right? Like, why reach out to me? What about insight or my portfolio or what I've done actually appeals? Like,
Mhm.
show that you have done your research
Mhm.
and that, again, you're picking an individual and not just an idea or a concept or a platform.
Sure. You don't want to be part of a big blast email that's not customized.
Just the BCC.
Yeah, right. That's great. Okay, and one last question on that note, in terms of another question we hear a lot is like, oh, DMs or email or both, or like, should I find some weird sneaky way to get in front of them? Like, does that stuff matter to you? Do you have opinions there?
The most reliable way for something to get read and responded to for me is email.
Sure.
Uh, LinkedIn messages kind of disappear into an abyss. I
Yes.
don't check all the other platforms with as much regularity, but sadly, I am always on email.
Aren't we all? Okay, amazing. This was super, super helpful. Thank you again for your insights. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
No problem. Good to see you, Mallory.
Good to see you. Thanks, Rebecca.